Some men stumble on this by accident, and it quietly rewires their entire life. Most men, it shatters them. And what I'm about to show you is one of those things that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Because right now, the decisions you believe are yours. The career you picked, the woman you chose, the life you think you built, were never really yours to begin with. They were written into you before you were old enough to question them, by your environment, by your conditioning, by forces you never even saw. Psychological research has documented it for decades. Most men are not deciding. They are simply executing pre-installed programs, reactions, beliefs, choices that run on autopilot. And the moment you finally see it, that is when everything either breaks or finally begins. Stay with me, because today I am showing you the exact research and the one decision that turns the illusion of control into real, dangerous power. Chapter 1, The Decision You Never Made. Let me start with something simple. Think about the last significant decision you made. Maybe it was a job you took, a relationship you stayed in or walked away from, a goal you chose to pursue, a boundary you set or failed to set. Sit with it for a moment. Now ask yourself honestly, where did the criteria for that decision actually come from? Not the surface reason you gave yourself or anyone else. The actual criteria, the specific set of values, fears, and beliefs that determined what felt right, what felt wrong, what felt possible, and what felt out of reach. If you are like most men, the honest answer is, you do not fully know. The criteria were just there. They felt like yours, because they have always been yours. They felt like you, because they have been operating inside you for so long, that the boundary between what you chose and what was placed in you dissolved somewhere in early childhood and was never re-examined. Chapter 2, The Automatic Self, the truth most men avoid. This is what psychologists call the automatic self, and this is where most men start feeling uncomfortable. Because this is not a theory. It is a documented, measurable, consistently reproducible feature of human cognition, studied seriously since the 1970s and confirmed repeatedly across cultures, demographics, and circumstances. Here's what the research actually shows. In 1977, two psychologists named Ellen Langer and Judith Rodin conducted a study on automatic behavior that produced one of the most uncomfortable findings in the history of social psychology. They demonstrated that human beings will execute complex social behaviors, giving money, helping strangers, making concessions, not because they have consciously decided to, but because a trigger in the environment activated a pre-existing program, and the program ran without awareness, without deliberation, without anything that could honestly be called a decision. They called it mindlessness. Not in the casual sense, but in the technical sense. A human being operating on automatic programming while experiencing the full subjective sensation of being in control. Let that sink in. You feel like you are deciding. The experience feels real, and underneath that experience, the program is simply running. Chapter 3. You are not the author. The trigger fired. The response executed. And the mind constructed a story after the fact. That felt like the decision itself. This was not a fringe finding. It has been replicated for over 40 years, and one of the men who built an entire framework around this was Daniel Kahneman. He described two systems, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, automatic, effortless, operating below conscious awareness, and responsible for most of your behavior. System 2 is slow, deliberate, effortful, and used far less than you think. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most of what you believe is System 2, is actually System 1. The deliberation you experience is mostly post hoc rationalization, meaning the decision was already made. Before you are even aware of it, you are not the author of most of your choices. You are the narrator. And if that hits you, subscribe to the Stoic path, because this is where most people stop, and this is where real awareness begins. Chapter 4. Who programmed you? Now here is where it gets more specific and more uncomfortable. The programs running your life were not generated randomly. They were installed, precisely, consistently, and in ways most men never question. Your parents installed programs, not through instruction, but through emotional patterns, what they rewarded, what they ignored, what they reacted to with warmth, and what they met with withdrawal. Children do not need explanation. They learn through repetition, thousands of repetitions, before they are even capable of questioning anything. Your school installed programs, rewarding compliance, punishing deviation, defining what matters and what does not. Your social environment installed programs, teaching you what kind of man is respected and what kind is invisible, what earns belonging and what leads to rejection. These programs run so deep that most men mistake them for personality. Chapter 5. The shattering realization. And here is the part that shatters most men. The life you are living right now is a direct expression of these programs. The choices, the relationships, the fears, the ambitions. All of it running exactly as installed, not your vision, not your genuine desire, but the output of a system written by other people. And this forces a question that most men cannot sit with. If most of what I believed were my choices were actually programs, then who am I? When the autopilot is turned off, most men never answer this. They escape it. Chapter 6. False growth. The trap. They install new programs, a new philosophy, a new identity, a new system, and call it growth. But the autopilot remains, running silently, unquestioned, unchallenged. But the men who don't escape, the ones who stay, discover something different, something quieter, something real. Chapter 7. The real self. Underneath the programming, there's something that was never programmed. Not dramatic, not flashy, but precise. A man who can see the difference between what was installed and what he actually is. And that difference changes everything, because without that distinction, you cannot make a real decision. Only programmed ones, but with it, you gain something rare, genuine agency, not the feeling of control, real control. Chapter 8. Why this makes you dangerous. This is what makes a man dangerous. Not violence, but unpredictability. A man who cannot be controlled by triggers, cannot be manipulated by fear, cannot be directed by reward systems, is a man who cannot be easily controlled, and systems are built on your predictability. Chapter 9. The one decision, the pause. Now listen carefully, because this is the part that changes everything. Knowledge is useless without method, and the method is simple, not easy, but simple. It is called the pause. Chapter 10. How the pause works. Every automatic response has a trigger. Something happens, and before you are aware, the response is already running. It feels like you, but it is not. The pause is catching that moment between trigger and execution and asking one question: is this response mine, or is this the program? Chapter 11. The practice. Is this anger real or automatic? Is this fear valid or installed? Is this choice mine or programmed? At first, it will feel impossible, because the program is fast. But with time, you begin to see the difference. Automatic responses feel immediate, obvious, like the only option. Real choices feel open, uncertain, alive. Chapter 12. The shift into power. And here is the shift. You don't fight the program. You don't suppress it. You simply do not execute it automatically, and in that moment, you create space. And that space is where real power exists. Final chapter. The decision that changes everything. This is the one decision. Not a dramatic life change. Not quitting everything. Not rebuilding your life overnight. Just this. Pause before you execute. Every time. In every significant moment. Because that is where you become the man who is actually choosing. Some men stumble on this by accident. The ones who stay are never the same. The ones who leave build better-looking prisons and call it growth. You are still here. That means something. If you felt this, subscribe to the Stoic Path and start paying attention to the moment before you act, because that moment is your only real freedom. Use it.